All right, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. I am Angi Shah, Research Associate for Urban Development at the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you, senior officials, engineers, project management consultants, community partners, and all other stakeholders who have connected to the session on YouTube as well. Welcome to the first workshop for stage 2 of the India Cycles for Change Challenge. This is an exciting moment for all of us. We have spent last year initiating very exciting activities and tests for cycling on ground as well. And it's now time to go big. Note that all the guidance we provide is open to all of the cities. So we encourage all the cities who are participating in this workshop to follow the activities that we're mentioning, all the guidance that we're going to be providing, especially the 25 cities who have proceeded into stage 2. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a quick look at the agenda for today. We will begin with an introductory address by Mr. Kunal Kapoor, Joint Secretary, Smart Cities Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. He will be sharing a few words of inspiration with us, as he always does. Next, very exciting, we will be having a discussion with national as well as international cities from varied contexts. We have on our panel today, Addis Ababa, Bogota, Pune, as well as Sevilla. They have been implementing citywide cycling infrastructure and have managed to do so in a very, very short span of time. So they will be sharing their journey and learnings through this panel discussion. Next, we have a presentation of our day by Parin Visaria, Senior Associate, ITDP. He will take you through how we can start up with the how we can scale up a cycling plan across the city, as well as how we can develop the three-year cycling action plan. Following that, we have some exciting new campaigns coming up your way, so sit back and stay tuned. We will be ending, as usual, with a Q&A session to address any queries that any of you may have. All right, so before we jump in, I would like to highlight a few housekeeping rules for everyone present. First, participants and panelists, feel free to chat and interact with each other in the chat box throughout the entire session. Please address the chats to panelists and attendees. There will be a drop down where you can do that as you are chatting, so everyone can see what you're trying to say. Also, type your questions in the question and answer box that you will be seeing at the bottom of your screen. Our team will shortlist these questions for the Q&A session towards the end. And finally, if you really like a question someone else has mentioned, you can upvote it and bring them to our attention as well. Okay, so welcome to stage 2. Each one of you have done some fantastic work over the past year. So let's gear up to now take this to the next level. Again, congratulations to all stage 2 cities for taking it one step further. We look forward to creating leading examples of Indian cycling cities by the end of this stage. But hang on. First, let's take a moment to cherish what we have already accomplished. From starting with surveys, actually listening to our citizens, to conducting city-wide campaigns and rallies, implementing successful on-ground cycling infrastructure, and finally, towards even adopting the right healthy streets policies, as well as ensuring institutional resilience within our government systems. It's been quite a journey. And this is what we have initiated together. So stage 1 in numbers, 400 plus kilometers of corridor streets and 3,500 plus kilometers of neighborhood streets have been identified for transformation. We have over 50 cities who have taken up campaigns and activities to engage with the citizens. Over 60,000 voices were heard through responses to surveys that were rolled out by all of the cities. And obviously, we cannot achieve anything alone. We had over 600 CSOs signing up to support their cities. We're so thrilled to be witnessing this moment. Keeping this experience in mind, let's learn from it and ensure a successful stage 2. Also, let's remember that we took up each of these activities and initiatives to embark on one single goal to create a city-wide network of healthy streets. Here's a very quick reminder of the 10 sacred pillars of our healthy streets, from ensuring that there is fair share of space for all, clean air to breathe, safety for women and children, walking and cycling made more attractive, and more, like you're seeing on this screen. If all of these pillars are successfully deployed, we're sure to have a street that is healthy, happy, and safe for everyone. So let's continue to keep these in mind as we proceed. All right, so now it's time to kickstart stage 2. It's time to go big and to go bold. On that note, let me just quickly check if we have Kunal sir here with us yet.
Not as yet, Auntie.
Sure. All right, so we can probably bring him in once he is with us. Okay, without further delay then, I would like to invite Ashwati Dilip, South Asia Director, ITDP, to introduce and invite the panelists as we move into the panel discussion itself. Requesting all of this. Sorry, just one more small instruction. I'm requesting all of the cities to stick to the presentation time limit, 8 to 10 minutes as we're discussing. Over to you, Ashwati.
Thank you so much, Angi, for that really exciting introduction. Cycling. When we've heard of the word cycling in the past, we've always sort of reminded ourselves with cities like Amsterdam or Utrecht from Netherlands or Copenhagen in Denmark. However, over the last 2 years, there's been a cohort of cities across the world that has prioritized the humble cycle. And we, all of us here, belong to that cohort of cities. And just like Angi mentioned, you are a bunch of cities that took action to show on the ground actual transformation, your tested interventions on the ground. You made sure that you brought your citizens to the cycle lanes, gave them the courage and the encouragement to cycle on our streets. And you also, through the entire process, right now are taking up key steps to make sure that cycling becomes a part of your journey going ahead through the adoption of the Healthy Streets policy as well. As Angi said, we are now looking at how can we go big, and we're sure that each one of you are ready to go big as well. Now, as we step into this next stage, it really gives us a very good opportunity to learn from some cycling pioneer cities around the world and within our own country. So here, I'd like to invite you to a panel discussion with panelists from across the world. Today, we have with us Sevilla, a city that within just 2 years implemented safe cycling networks in 80 kilometers of streets across the city. Bogota, that continuously, consistently built on its network and today has about 500 kilometers of network. And as we heard from Nicholas in the past, the secretary had mentioned that these cities continue to get pushback, but they've embraced data-based solutions to push the opponents back. Next, we have with us a team from Addis Ababa, a city from Ethiopia, the second most populous country in Africa. And Ethiopia has adopted a 10-year NMT strategy. And Addis Ababa is taking its steps by creating 3-year action plans and showing action on the ground as well. And last but not the least, we have our very own Pune, a city that is created a cycle plan for itself and has consistently taken action to create a network of safe cycle tracks in the city. So today, I'd first like to invite Manuel Calvo, Sustainable Mobility Consultant from Sevilla, to give us a brief introduction into what is it that Sevilla had done to become the cycling pioneer. Over to you, Manuel.
Okay, good morning here from Spain. It's a pleasure for me to be with you guys today, especially in India, where there's a big country and much bigger than ours. But for me, it's also a pleasure, as I said, to be here and to share with you our experience. And so that could help you to develop better cities there in India too. I'm going to share my screen in order for me to show.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Yeah, do you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Do you see your faces or just the presentation?
We see your face, our faces, and the presentation as well.
That's it. Okay. In Seville, first of all, I would like to know where Seville is. It's some southwestern Europe, It's a city located near Africa, and so we don't have such a culture about cycling that the Central Europeans have in Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, etc. It's a small city for your standards. It's about 1.5 million inhabitants in the metropolitan area, but the central city where all happened, it's about 700,000 inhabitants. We had a non-existent cycling culture back then. We are talking about the beginning of the 21st century. It's a city where there's a high consideration of cars as a socioeconomic status indicator, 6 decades of urban planning devoted to cars, and a high raising of car mobility from the 80s. Even though in the 40s, in the 20th century, we did have bikes that happened all around the world. The bike was a transportation mean used by the general population in all the cities around the world. Well, here you have some data about the evolution of the modal share of the metropolitan area. You could see from the 1983, there's a slowing down of the mobility done by walking and by cycling. And there's a steep rise on cars mobility till the last data that we have reliable in 2007. And this was the sort of our bike network back in 2005, about 15 kilometers of unconnected bike lanes. We didn't have actually a network. So, but here I'm going to show you some pictures about the people that are cycling now here in the city. We are not talking about sport cycling. We are not talking about people with helmets or with sportish gear on the bike. They're just using the bike for recreation or for transportation to go to from point A to point B, the parking lots, people just using the bike as a transportation means, as a tool for going anywhere around the city. So you see, there's people with in every day gear, normal people going. They're not cyclists as an identity thing. They're just using the bike for cycling and for going anywhere. Some intersections, people bringing their children to school with cargo bikes. Yeah, religious nuns also, Catholic nuns also by bike. People in their nice suits using bikes. There's a good indicator for bike usage all around the cities, the packed parking facilities that we have around the city. You can see all full of bikes. So what happened back in 2005 and 2006? Well, we developed a strategy around the city when we considered cycling as a non-motorized means of transportation. We also put the bike in a context of sustainable mobility urban system. We wrote a cycling master plan, and we also developed a special concept about cycling infrastructure in the city. And these are the main lessons that we learned in Seville back then. We had a network concept. That network had to have continuity, should be uniform and recognizable, should be direct, especially in their intersections. And it was placed, the bike lanes were placed along the main avenues and streets. They were not placed on the residential areas where traffic calming measures are they are more efficient. And so we placed the network along the main avenues and streets where the transport corridors do take place in all the cities around the world. What we applied in Seville was to design a first phase of a complete network that was placed as a single project. That network was made out of a bi-directional path at sidewalk level, mainly on previous road surface. So we took 80% of that space from the cars. We also coordinated policies that were all written and included in a master plan. And also we had a methodology of coordination about decision-making with all the civil society and participation with all the stakeholders that were involved on the development of the network and the cycle promotion in all around Seville. So this was the first network, as the presentation said before, an introduction of this said before. We placed 80 kilometers of bike lanes, of a network, of a complete network in the first phase, and it all happened in 2 years. So the network was the project. We were not talking about pieces of bike lane on this or that avenue. No, we learned that the main goal of the cycling promotion in the city was to have a network, a functional network that made cycling comfortable, to use it as a means of transportation in an everyday basis for almost everyone in the city, and not just the so-called cyclists. This is the evolution of the network. Back in 2010, we also had the opportunity to go for 40 more kilometers on the network. So it was completed with 120 kilometers back in 2010. And right now, the network is about 200 kilometers of bike lanes all around the city, as you can see on this image. Also, there was a bike sharing system put in place in the city of 250 stations. You can see all the red dots all around the city. There are no more than 300 meters between each station, and 2,500 bikes. And it was also made in a really short period of time. We were talking about 6 months. So we covered the whole area of the city, as you can see on this image. Well, this is how the bike usage boomed back then, from 2005 to 2011. It peaked in about 70,000 trips every working day. And since then, we have experienced sort of a constant and stable usage of bike trips around on an everyday basis. So we think that this infrastructure sort of has been or is saturated at this moment. And we also think that there should be promoted more measures about sustainable mobility that implies car usage restrictions. Since they are not put in place at the moment, the bike trips at this moment are, as you can see on this graph, really stable. You can see also that in blue, you have the usage of scooters, of electric scooters. We have more data from 2021 that this usage has been doubled on the last 2 years. Here you can also see in the graph how the risk of going by bike, of getting a serious injury if you use the bike, has been going down stably since we built the bike network here. So there was also another plan written back in 2017, and the aim of the plan is to improve the quality and to integrate the bike cycling promotion measures into a wider sustainable mobility strategy around the city that at the moment is still not taken into place, and it's not happening actually. So that's why the cycling numbers are stable right now. But I'm sure if we are able to have those measures about sustainable mobility in a broad sense, we are going to have more bike trips in an everyday basis. So remember that it always seems impossible until it's done. That's a really great quote by Nelson Mandela. And we've experienced that in our city where we had no bikes, and now you can say that the bike is into the urban culture of the city, and the bike is into the mobility equation in an everyday basis of the almost the complete population. Right now, we have figures that tell us that about 20% of the population in Seville use the bike, maybe not in a daily basis, but in a monthly basis. So we can say that now the bike is part of the, as I said, the urban culture of the city. So this has been my presentation. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer your questions if you have them. I'll be happy in cycling and walking. Remember that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Manuel. And, like you said, we will always remember that it seems impossible. It always seems impossible until it's done. And I'm sure that quote of yours would really inspire our cities as well. So we now move next from Sevilla in Spain to Bogota in Colombia. And unfortunately, Andrea, the Bogota bicycle manager, is unable to join us live because it's 4 a.m. in Bogota, but she was really interested in sharing the transformation of Bogota. And hence I'd request Smritika to play the video of Andrea sharing the journey of Bogota.
Hi there, my name is Andrea Maria Navarrete Mogollon and I am the Bogota bicycle manager. I want to tell you about Bogota, the bike culture, and also about cycling infrastructure. Bogota is a reference for the world in terms of bicycle use. It has been known because of the Ciclovia or because its bicycle path network today has more than 519 kilometers, or for the Day Without Car that is done the first Thursday of each February, and that was decided in a vote, or for the thousands of people who uses their bicycles to work and to go to study. It is also important to mention that Bogota has some particular characteristics that contribute cycling. For example, being a cold city and being a flat city makes possible that many people that use bicycles for their daily trips do more than 10 kilometers just in one trip. It is also important to understand that even Bogota is a huge city with more than 8 million of people, and it is a densified and compact city. The sum of citizen movement and public policy, the bike public policy, geographic and weather conditions, and the way the city has been built generates the circumstances to become Bogota a very interesting study case in relation to bike use. On the other hand, today people in Bogota have more clear rules in towards to the price you have to pay for, the number of spaces public parking should have, the best designs in terms of facility. The city goes more over what the law says, and the city offers advisory to who wants to have a good bike parking. The city also gives this stamp to recognize a bike-friendly place. And today, almost all the malls, the university, the government buildings, and the public parking give you the option of parking your bike. About the implementation of emergency bike lanes in the COVID-19 context, this measure was based on three objectives. The first one was the mirror to the city's public transport system. The second, city-region connection, and considering the demand for cyclists to and from nearby municipalities, and connections to the existing network of bike paths. Initially, the temporary bike path had an extension of 170 kilometers. Finally, the first intervention left 35 kilometers consolidated. In May of the last year, the city already had 18.4 kilometers of temporary bike lines. And thanks to the impact of the temporary bike lines, the process of incorporation of some temporary to permanent bike lines route, for example, Carrera Séptima, Carrera Novena, and Calle 13, began in July, achieved by December of the last year to have a definite way as part of the network of bike paths for 28 kilometers. In December, the physical intervention of the 28 kilometers that become part of the network of bike paths of the city. Between April and May of this year, due to the disturbance of public order, the measure was suspended, and in June of this year, after analyzing some traffic variables such as congestion, speed, or motorized traffic and its relationship with transport routes, demand generated by cyclists, accidents, pedestrians, and cyclists, and depth of materials, it is resumed to measure with 18 kilometers. Also, these 28 kilometers of temporary bike lines migrate to permanent bike lanes include in the city network, and 80 kilometers of temporary bike paths implemented in June of the last year. Currently, we have 18 kilometers of temporary bike line network today. And all these pop-up bike lines are added to the network of 519 kilometers of cycling infrastructure. Now, I want to talk about the particular case of 3 routes that shows the strategy of redistribution of space on the road was implemented through emergency bike lines and the impact that this has had on the number of cyclists attracted, speeds of movement of motorized vehicles, and number of road accidents. In Calle 13, for example, the road has gone through 2 very important phases. In March to December of the last year, there was a temporary bike path which served to show the impact that it has on the circulation of non-motorized modes, and if there is an exclusive section. This intervention led the construction of an exclusive cycling path that allows the safe presence of cyclists in freight logistic roads such as Calle 13, in addition to being a connector of the city region. Thanks to this intervention, the cyclist flow has increased more than 300%, with a record of 0 fatalities so far in this year. Also, Carrera Séptima, some actions done was the migration for temporary bike paths to road bike paths, and approach to communities through informational outreach activities for migration to road bike paths. Finally, for example, the Carrera 68 is currently in an intervention phase to the construction of one of the lines of the BRT system. The most representative of this road, in addition to the growth of cycling flows and its low variation in traffic speeds, is related to the presence of a safe and comfortable space for cyclists. Thanks to the information collected in the temporary bike path phase, the construction company of this project was recommending to keep the layout of the temporary bike path for the duration of the intervention. Due to the cycling flows it attracts and the connectivity it provides to the citizen. In general, the routes of corridors where the space of the road was redistributed to be able to have temporary bike lines, and the speed of the movement of motorized vehicles was not significantly impacted. However, in those same corridors, the presence of even emerging material easy to install did dramatically impact the use of the bicycle, registering increase in the use of more than 500%. Finally, the emerging cycling infrastructure due to the COVID-19 has managed to impact traffic indicators such as accidents. In general, it has been possible to reduce between the last year and this year the accident rate in cyclists in the corridors where the measure was adopted. In this way, Bogota continues working hard each day to have more people riding bicycles and improving their trip quality. The necessities change each day, so the challenge is to satisfy the diverse necessities and increase population of cyclists. And this is the way we work today and we work for. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Team Bogota, for joining us. Even though, sending us this presentation, though it's 4 a.m. In Bogota as we speak. And it was so fascinating to see that even though the city has created as much as 500 kilometers, they continue to strive on expanding their network, seeing what the needs of their cyclists are, and how is it that we can make the network more and more safe for their cyclists. Before we go to the next city, we are delighted to be joined by Mr. Kunal Kumar, the Joint Secretary of the Smart Cities Mission, and Mr. Rahul Kapoor, sir, the Director of the Smart Cities Mission as well, from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. So, sir, before we hear from Addis Ababa as well as from our own city of Pune, could you share your introductory address and inspire our cities?
Thank you, Aswati, for inviting me. And first of all, it was an awesome presentation from the Bogota team. I think the inspiration clearly lies in action, and seeing is believing, and seeing how cities across the world are, turning the tide and creating a larger space for sustainable transport, active living is something to really see and get inspired from. I would be very brief because I would be interested more in letting the audience and myself listen to what other cities are doing, Addis Ababa later, and of course, maybe other cities also on the call. I think, this is one book I just came across, which I just completed, which is called Building the Cycling City. And I think Chris, who is one of the authors of the book, also was on the panel of the India Cycles for Change jury. And what a lovely book. So it's one thing to actually read a theoretical book on how to do things. But the way this book is structured, it goes into nitty-gritties of how the challenges that were faced by the pioneers or the leaders who actually looked at turning the tide in their cities. It talks about the country of Netherlands, where in the 1970s, almost all cities were headed towards becoming car-driven havens, so to say. Of course, they don't become havens, as we know. And then subsequently, how strong leadership that came out, whether it is in Groningen or maybe in Eindhoven or maybe in Amsterdam and Rotterdam, and how the tide changed. Of course, one may end up thinking very simplistically that this is part of their culture, and therefore there's nothing great. Dutch have always been cycling. It's not the case. As I said, in the 1970s, probably every city was headed towards becoming a car-driven city. So the heartening thing to note is that most of the things that we are trying to attempt under the challenge, tactical urbanism, trying out ideas, engaging with people, getting as many people into partnerships and working with them, is all very prominently present in those cities' action plans during those times. But what we must not mistake is those are technical things, and they are never written in stone to be done in an X way or Y way. There have to be different nuances, difference in the way we approach these things in different cities, as the contexts are different, people are different, cultures are different. Although we can call tactical urbanism under one umbrella, but the way of doing tactical urbanism initiatives can be very different for different cities. The way you engage with people will be very different for different cities. And that's where the bigger question comes in, which is strongly reflected in that book, is the role of the leadership. Is a role of the leadership not only to turn the tide in favor of in cycling and sustainable transport, but the leadership's role in actually running against the tide of the thought that currently prevails. And unless there is leadership, unless there is this dirtying of your hands, dealing with a lot of engagement and sometimes criticism and sometimes testing times, when you feel like giving up and you say that how do I actually go to the next step, then of course you're not going to change your city. So that's where I think fundamentally the change could end up becoming technical, short term, or becoming long term. So we're all from the fraternity of cities. I worked as a city commissioner, and many other of my people, many of the colleagues on the call are actually currently doing that, playing that role. All of us have to reflect whether we are providing that kind of leadership. This is our time. Tomorrow or day after, you may not be the leader of the city, somebody else may be, but this is your time. And unless you take on the challenge that, it is under my leadership that at least a part of the city or a part of the entire framework of mobility in my city would change towards positive direction, towards sustainable direction. And I will do, come what may, whatever challenge comes, I'll try to, talk the right thing and get the right thing done. It's not going to happen only by technical initiatives like tactical urbanism and so on and so forth. They are important, but under the overall umbrella of having a clear plan, engagement with the right set of stakeholders, and a strong leadership at the top. So we are at this stage, at the second stage getting over. 25 cities have been selected, and sooner than later, I hope, because of so many different exigencies, they have been postponing the program. But very soon, I think we're going to have a meeting of all the champion cities who have been able to successfully carry out these first level initiatives and are moving into the second stage, and also launch the next cycle of the Cycles for Change program. I do hope that within the next 10 to 15 days, we will have a get together. I don't know this Omicron, right? Is mentally troubling you or whatever. We'll see how many people are able to come for a physically available workshop or online. We will look at that around the 15th of December, but we'll look forward to hosting you, meeting you, listening from your leadership stories, learning from your leadership stories. And that's probably the best way to grow, because howsoever you may be, you may be an urban planner with a PhD in urban planning, but unless we get things right, it's the skills that we actually demonstrate on ground, it's the leadership that we have demonstrate on ground, which is actually going to take us forward. And this actually we immensely learning from our peers and other cities across the world. So of course, I recently completed 5,000 kilometers of cycling this year myself. Although I don't, most of it also is recreational cycling, but I've been cycling to work for the last 1 year. And in Delhi, most people, when I say this, become shell-shocked as to how this is possible. I think, this was a thought which was probably going on in my mind in my Pune days and actually got actuated in Delhi. And I do it for fun. It's become part of my life. I'm sure many of you have been thinking about it. Please go out and start on a personal note, and also inspire others, and think of creative ways of getting more and more people to come out, walk and cycle in your cities. So that's it from me. Ashwati, look forward to the presentations going forward and listening to all the great ideas on this call. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Rahul, sir, would you like to say a few words, sir?
No, Ashwati, I think so much of work is already happening, and I'm sure we would like to listen to the other cities that are here in the call. But from my side, I think to all the participants, please, let's get inspired from the words that the Joint Secretary just spoke. And in fact, sitting next to him, I feel very pumped up to take up this challenge. So all the best to all the cities, and we look forward to the other presentations.
So hopefully I am my first convert here.
I'm already converted.
He's already converted, sir. Yeah. So thank you so much, Kunal, sir. And so when we started the stage one, I remember you had inspired us to read the Street 5. And there, Janat Siddiq Khan so clearly mentioned that when you push the status quo, it actually pushes you back harder, but you still have to fight against that. And that's where leadership really comes in. And even with, from Manuel's presentation on Sevier, we heard how just in 2 years, because of the strong political will, they were able to look at an 80-kilometer network as one project itself. So it just completely continuously, seems to reinforce that this is definitely a very, very important ingredient, along with, as you said, the action plan and the engagement with citizens. And Pareen would be taking the cities through the action plan as well going ahead. So thank you so much, sir, for actually introducing the technical components that we are going to talk about, along with the leadership components and the communications as well. So as we're all waiting for the next city, I do take this as an honor to invite Addis Ababa, Bethlehem Tadese, the transport engineer, public and NMT team leader, Addis Ababa. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thanks all, and greetings for all also. I would like to introduce myself a little. I am Bethlehem from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and I am working as a public and non-motorized transport team leader in the Bureau of Addis Ababa City Administration. So I want to share you the best experience of Addis from our starting to the past 3 years. And also we are so jammy to be one part of this workshop, because it's a best experience for us also to share those ideas and things for your Indian. And also I have also some memories with this country, because I did my second degree there at IIT Roorkee, India. So I'm so glad to be part of this workshop. So let me share my slide. Sorry.
No problem, definitely. Would you need some support? Do you want our team to present, or would you be okay presenting?
Yeah, okay. You can share from your side also, I think.
Yeah, sure. I'll
okay.
share. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So when I start this slide, this is how we are working on the motto, which is Street for People in Addis. So as I said, Addis is on the move of walking and cycling nowadays since 2019. We are working different outdoor and indoor activities, different panels and related activities, which are working on this walking and cycling. Next slide, please. Next slide. So on the main activities before this slide, which is there are many main initiatives which are working as I say, safe cycling activities. From them, these are the main activities we are working on throughout these 3 years, past 3 years, aiming such points which are mentioned here. So doing these things as accessible and affordable, cycling to become an accessible and affordable for the society, regardless of awareness also. We are working outdoor activities each month by participating all societies at different locations and stations with different volunteer groups, bicycle associations of the city, and also having the plan within this 10 years strategy. We have planned a 10-year strategy. From that 200-kilometer cycling network, we are trying to do this the first 60 kilometers within the first 3 years. So this is also one point under this safe cycling program, and preparation of such different guidelines, toolkits and manuals. Also the other way how to be reached for these things, including research and capacity building activities. So nowadays we are working by aiming such main points under these guidelines. So the next one. So from that, as I said, main initiatives, we are working on these main points, including the NMT guiding on the first 10 years NMT strategy plan. So the next slide, please. So what we are going to do on this strategy, as I said, this is the first 10 years program strategy, which is developed by ITDP in collaboration with other also main stakeholders in it. And it has also a first 3 years implementation strategic plan also in it. So underlining this guideline, we are trying to do the main activities which are working on the cycling and walking strategy things, which are the main elements under it. So the next slide. So regarding the first, this strategic plan, we are doing this also manuals and preparation, which are used to as a guideline for the city and the users. The first one is this is a cycling planning guideline, which is mainly used for as a manual, which is used for the cyclists, how they cycle safely, what are those conditions, criteria have to be followed, which is developed by WRI and the city administration, doing on this planning and designing guideline. The other one, which is also the network plan, which is also a 10 years goal. On the cycle network plan, we have putting which corridors, which networks have to be linked on which locations. Those locations which are prioritized are also be in it based on their hierarchical level of connection. So in this manual also, it is as a main guideline which is used to plan the city on connecting those streets and cycle networks with different public transports, BRTs and LRT lines, and different stations, which are origin destination principles are included under it. So this is the main manuals. The other one, which is also a toolkit provided for the users, which is used as main guidelines and main pointers, how cyclists do these things, do and don'ts are also in it. So this is also the other guideline we are doing with it. Other one, which is the sharing system, the bike sharing system, which is also the other document which is related to this strategic plan. So in general, we have around total of 41.7 kilometers of cycle networks are constructed, implemented, and ongoing projects are also in it. So this is how the city bike lane projects are look like at different locations. These locations are including main cities, outskirts cities, and those condominium and residential areas are included in it. So the selection method is also by including those locations. So when we see the existing cycle corridors, those corridors which are already existed and implemented corridors, this one is the first pilot corridor, which is the Labu-Jammu corridor in around 2.9 kilometers. Its length is like this. It's a bidirectional corridor. This is the first corridor we are trying to, as a pilot first, then within 6 years of trials, we do different data systems. We take the responses of different users on it. So it is one of our first pilot corridor. The other one, which is then auto park walking and cycling lane, it covers around 9.9 kilometers. And this is also one of the main initiatives in the city, including its walking and cycling side by side. Then the other one, which is next slide, please. This is also from Zagaya to Mescal Square Street. This is also around 4.1 kilometers it covers. So how it looks before and after is pointed on the picture, as you see. So these are the main things which are already existed on the city. So those are which is under constructions are also be shown under the on the picture here. The one which is from Kaliti to Tulidun to cycle corridor, this is a little bit outskirts area of the city, but it links with different public transport areas. That's why it's selected beside the roadway. This is cycle corridors are also be incorporated in it. This is also the other corridor, which is from Haile Garment area. So what are the main layouts which are also be included under the cycle lane network plan? Also be included as a picture. I try to see it as a picture, which is more, it is clear to be seen. So this is the one which is at the Bole Road cycle corridor, which is before and after the proposed segregated. How it will be next is shown on the picture. So this is at the main city, which is located, how the Addis Ababa cycle network plan is included. This corridor looks like this. So this is also the next layout for the bidirectional cycle track from Piazza to Ras Makonnen corridor. This is also the other one, which is from Gate Farm corridor, Gate Farm Basha corridor. So how the cities are transforming those existing conditions to the new conditions looks by this way. So how results show, I picked the Labu Jamo corridor, which is the first 2.9 kilometer corridor. So this is how the during data collection method, how we got the data before and after data, which are taken through each consecutive months. So how the cycle per volume per hour in each direction looks like, shows there is some difference we got through this data collection method. So the feedbacks, the data we had shows the positive results in terms of the average number of cyclists per hour. We got more than 7.5 times increase in the users. And regarding of the average vehicles per hour also, it will, the before and after data shows there is some change of modification on that. And also from the survey response, also how the users show their response, how they are satisfied, how they feel safe and their degree of safety, and how the delineators which are provided on the corridor make them safe, also shows on the results. This is also the TRAOT, which is the Certification of Training of Trainers program we have done so far for the users to be trained by the different school teachers, cycle associations, and others. This is a training which is given for them, and including the providing of cyclists for them. They will give different opportunities we got. So the general opportunities we got from these activities are in terms of political support. We got different acceptance from at national and higher levels officials also on this program. Different investments are done on these things, also including strategy and planning documents preparation, and also the formation of technical teams regarding these works are also be there. So these activities brings us to the next level. So this is some of the opportunities, but some challenges are also be there beside in terms of some congestion, in terms of the capacity and awareness and cultural acceptance of the society are some of the main challenges we have that through this trial. So this is how the general things we are so far doing in Addis. Thanks for having this opportunity through this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Team Addis Ababa. And just seeing from your presentations about how you have a plan for 200 kilometers and how you actually collected data to see that there has been a 7.5 times increase in cyclists was really inspiring. Now, coming to our very own city from our own country, Pune, we sometimes think, oh, it's fantastic to hear all this transformation from across the world, but this is not possible in India. And hence, we have a champion straight from, from the heart of our city. And to share more about Pune, I'd like to invite Shri Dinkar Kozare, sir, Executive Engineer, Road Department from Pune, as well as Sanskriti Menon, Senior Program Director, Center for Environment Education. Over to both of you.
Thank you, Ashwati. I just want to show you that there are a lot of us here from the PMC. And Mr. Paul is here, Mr. Gojare had to just leave. But I'll try and relate the story of Pune from here. Thanks. So just for the benefit of colleagues who are not from India who joined, so Pune is amongst the top 10 largest cities of India, and it's part of a highly urbanized region. And the municipal area has a population of 3.5 to 4 million. as per 10 years ago, the census. And, you know, in the 1980s, Pune was known as the bicycle city, and the 87 development plan noted that, you know, there's a 21% more share of cycles. And it actually made provisions for cycleways and a cycle bridge that were embedded in the 1987 development plan. But in the 1990s, the picture changed, and the cycle plan of the 80s was not implemented. And there was also the inability of public transport to keep pace. And we saw a lot of rise in two-wheeler usage, motorized two-wheeler usage. And at that point, you know, local civic groups did raise a discussion on the need for sustainable mobility, and in fact have been demanding safe walking and cycling facilities, unlike the speaker who spoke first. And fortunately, in the 2000s, we saw a wider national level questioning of vehicular growth, especially with the National Urban Transport Policy and the Urban Renewal Mission, initiation of bus rapid transit in Pune and India as a whole. And Pune's comprehensive mobility plan was also prepared, which indicated the need for a major focus on walking, cycling, and public transport. And so, you know, the national policies on sustainable mobility, as well as this local engagement, created a positive context for PMC's early experiments, I'll say, in cycling, which was, in fact, you know, more 10 to 15 years ago. And at that point, about 60 kilometers of cycle tracks and a proposal for bike share was also made. This was around 2005 or 10 or so. And that gave actually a lot of learnings about design, about management, about public attitudes to cycling. And so that was really the context in which, you know, then PMC asked the Ministry of Urban Development, the Government of India, to provide support to prepare, you know, more modern cycle plan, which was then granted in 2015. And then PMC, through, you know, a tender process, appointed a consortium. So I'll just share my slides now. And just share, you know, what that experience has been. Yeah. Yes. You see it on presentation mode. So, you know, the terms of reference were also very well drafted by the PMC, and as well as, you know, the local civic groups that had been part of asking for a cycle plan to be created. And the terms were really to create a citywide cycle plan with a public bicycle scheme, bicycle parking facilities, integration with the public transit, design guidelines, as well as institutional mechanisms, and cycle promotion. And, you know, the way it was that the PMC traffic department, to which the consultants were reporting, had a bicycle advisory group with cyclists from Pune, 405, who were mediating between the consultants and the traffic department. And this was really a very nice, what shall I say, a public-private partnership in the creation of the bicycle plan. And these were the consultants. So the planning process actually took some time, because we did quite extensive studies and surveys. And we also had public consultations before and after plan drafting. And then the public inputs were integrated into the plan, and then it was placed to the Pune Municipal Corporation's general body for approval. So you can see it took almost a year and a half to create the plan, and that was because a fairly rigorous process of data collection was done, as well as a pretty rigorous process of meeting at all ward, you know, electoral administrative wards, and a number of different types of people were, you know, including children and youth and schools, etc., were contacted, and non-cyclists as well. You know, what's preventing you from cycling? And, you know, this was the kind of outreach that was done through meetings and newspapers, and also social media. And that kind of gave us a lot of insight into, you know, what is happening as regards cycling. In the next few slides, I'll just share some of those insights, which were then formative in the creation of the cycle plan. So we realized that, you know, it's not okay to just do one track here or one track there, or a small area of cycling. You really need the whole city to be cycle friendly, because people are cycling fairly long distances. There is short distance cycling as well as fairly long distance cycling. And so the circles on this slide represent the short distance cycling, but you can see it's really across the city that some people are really going. We also had, you know, as I said, the early experiments in cycle track creation which made us realize that it's not enough to just create the cycle tracks. You actually need consistent management to keep the cycle tracks and the cycle infrastructure usable. And we really documented all the kinds of things that go wrong, both in the design and in the management. And I think that gave us a lot of learning into, really what the design specs should be, what the governance and, really the management at the municipal corporation level has to be to consistently keep the infra usable. Again, we saw from the attitudinal part, that cyclists feel almost, 90% of the cyclists really feel unsafe on the roads because of the behavior of motorists. And, we realized that it will be necessary, especially on really busy roads, to have segregation. Otherwise, it's people putting their lives at risk. There are recreational cyclists, of course, but a lot of people are in fact cycling because they have to cycle. And if you want that number to grow, they need to feel safe. Again, in the attitudinal service, the biggest reasons for not cycling by non-cyclists, or people who had given up cycling, was that it was not safe to cycle. And the converse question that if you have safe infrastructure, will you cycle? Over 90% people said that I would cycle regularly or sometimes if it were possible to create safer infrastructure. And what is it that you want most, and that also reflected the same thing, that if you can prevent motorcyclists on cycle tracks, keep cycle tracks separate. We need good infrastructure, smooth cycling, and we want also cycle parking facilities, because apparently about 25 to 30% people had got stolen, their cycles, and that also gave us the idea of cycle rentals. So this detail sort of going to the people to really ask what you need helped us put together, fairly detailed kind of a cycle plan. And looking at then the trip, the kinds of trips people are making, which was evident through the pattern of travel that people have, we realized that we filtered for the trips that, say, fairly younger age group was making, as well as the distance, that we are saying that up to 5 kilometers, it is quite easy for people to cycle. Then if you filter for that, you can, in a city like Pune, get up to 25% mode share of cycling. And so this was not like a, pulled out of the hat kind of a number. It is backed by analysis of, what would be the easiest low-hanging fruit of having people shift to cycling. So as much as 25% would be a really good win. But for that, we really need to create infrastructure which is safe and cyclist friendly. And so that really became part of the vision for the Pune cycle plan, which is to, go up to this 25% mode share by the year 2031. And we are hopeful that, over the next few years, that this will in fact be possible, that we have Pune as a cycling friendly city. And these were really the components in response also to the TOR. Firstly, that there has to be a dedicated team. And it was originally conceived of as the bicycle department at PMC. Then, it's not enough to just create cycle tracks. You need like an ecosystem of cycling, And so you also need what design guidelines. They need to be to a particular specification. You need an extensive cycle track network. The public bicycle share helps in getting more people into cycling. You need to integrate it with transit, because you can have a trip which is cycle, bus, walk, or a walk, bus, cycle if you have a bike share as well. And then people do need safe cycle parking if you're taking your own cycles, and of course repair and rest places, etc. Mostly also you need this attitude of cycle inclusive mobility planning. So it's not enough, because cycle is existing as part of a whole mobility ecosystem, and as we say that if it is to be connected with transit, then you need to be thinking that yes, so if there's a bus stop, then where will I put also people who are coming by cycle, where will they park? And again, because if the road is very crowded with private motor vehicles, and where is the space for a cyclist? And that is what we mean by cycle inclusive mobility planning, that we will also eventually have to start putting curbs on private motorized transport in favor of walk, cycle, and public transport. And this is quite, it's drawing really from what the national policy is, because that's what the National Urban Transport Policy says, that we have to promote sustainable modes, and we have to curb the unsustainable modes, and cycle inclusive planning is really relating to that. Then again, you need regulation and enforcement, which is helping to curb the the incidences of, say, private bikes or cars parking on the bicycle track or footpath even, and that needs to go along with. Otherwise, you'll have created great infrastructure, but it will be used not by cyclists but by bikes and cars. And then again, while people have said in the past that you build it and build good infrastructure, people will come, I think it takes a little more. You will need some promotion and outreach, and really encourage people to come in. And there's a whole lot of things that you can do. We in fact had 30 good ideas which are embedded in the cycle plan. And then also this monitoring and evaluation to make sure that consistently you look at what things are not working, and keep working at it to make things better. And so just to quickly take you through these slides, the role of the bicycle department is, of course, to do the planning, but also coordinate with all the ancillary agencies, or the other sister agencies, so to say, which is like in Pune, the bus transit, the metro is coming up, also the smart city and the regional development authority, because it's we are saying that we want a citywide network. We are saying that cycling needs to be integrated with other services. And of course, they are the bicycle department. In this case, it finally happened that the road department is the keeper of the cycle plan and is responsible for it. So they are responsible for design and also the capacity building, also the monitoring and evaluation, and the public engagement and promotion. So all the functions that we said are in the cycle plan are in fact now with the road department. And this is what the citywide network looks like. It's a combination primarily of segregated cycle tracks and as well as other types of cycle ways. And we were suggesting that to decongest the core city, you could have walking and cycling, and as well as something like a shuttle to decongest. The design guidelines, Pune is fortunate to have already, PMC took the effort to make urban street design guidelines, and the cycle design guidelines are in addition to the street design guidelines. And so these are some of the views of what it looks like, and it's fairly detailed, including what happens at junctions and crossings and signals. And bike share, I think everybody knows. I'll just say that as part of the bicycle plan, we kind of identified where these docking stations could be. Again, the specifications for how public transit needs to be linked. We also identified, quite a number of bicycle parking. And this requires also maybe a change in the development control rules for buildings, as well as, in the city, a specification for how the cycle parking has to be. And if you can define this, it's easier for cyclists. Now, this requires the regulation and enforcement. Now, as you know, it is already part of the rules of the road of the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. It means that you cannot really park and you cannot drive on footpaths and cycle tracks. But how is the monitoring and enforcement to take place? And this requires that the PMC needs to be in touch with the traffic police. And of course, PMC itself has some powers, which means that they need to be actually exercised. And CCTV is one way of doing it. We've also suggested cycle wardens, and this needs to be actually tried out, because it's an idea, but needs to be piloted and tried out how it can happen. And quite a number of outreach and promotion. Now, the idea in outreach and promotion is not to say that children should start cycling, because today it's not really safe to cycle, but to make sure that schools and youth are kind of engaged in making areas cycle safe. And so the PMC, citizens groups, ward offices, elected representatives, parents groups, school, should all work together to make safe routes to school, safe routes to college, etc. And then also work with commercial houses to make sure that the parking, cycle parking is provided at a at a level which is easy for cyclists, and not like 3 basements down where you have to go up and down with your cycle. So many such ideas were there. And finally, it's also that annually, PMC has an environment status report which is tabled in July every year to the general body. So the suggestion in the cycle plan is that similarly, you should have an annual report on what is the progress made on the implementation of the cycle plan, so that it is monitored by the highest decision-making body in the PMC every year, and also that a participatory audit of cycle infra should be done with cyclists and other interested citizens. So informally, of course, all of us who are like, cyclists in the NGOs, civil society circles as well. So we are very much in touch with the PMC, and what the great thing has been is that, the bicycle.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Could we just so that we can take more questions later? Yeah, sure.
So just winding up to say that, this is amongst the last week of Mr. Kunal Kumar in Pune, when he actually launched the bicycle department in Pune. And, in the last 2-3 years, because this was 2017 December, when the cycle plan was approved by the general body, about 40 kilometers have been created with the Pune Streets program, and more are underway now. And Mr. Gujari, he just left, but he wanted me to share these particular slides because we are doing some design innovations as well with the cycle track at the level with the carriageway, those segregated. And see, these are some of the latest pictures just from last week. And so the implementation thus far has been that, there is a PMC, the road department is in charge of implementation. The non-motorized transport committee is overseeing and is very much in touch, and every 2-3 months there's a meeting done. As I said, several kilometers of cycle track are underway just now, and design refinements are underway. PMC also participated in the cycle challenge from the MOUA. The public bicycle share did not work quite well in Pune, though, it was amongst the first cities that had about 8,000 cycles in 2018, but most of them have left, not because of something that we did wrong in Pune, but I think Mobike and OFO have left India as a whole in many other countries. So we have to rework how we want the public bicycle share. And enforcement continues to be something that we will have to work on. And outreach is now being reinitiated, but again, like post-COVID, there is interest in cycling, and we really have to work out further on the citywide outreach. So thanks, that's all.
Thank you so much, Sanskriti. It was really, great to hear from Pune, and so many aspects which we think that the other cities do need to embrace as we're going into the stage 2. So we are running really low on time, and I'm just going to have very quick rapid fire sort of, questions to the team. And I'll start with you, Manuel. You said about the fact that, build it as a whole and build it fast. And I think when it comes to, infrastructure, the infrastructure is the first thing that cities do tend to do. But sometimes the issue is that the cyclists are not on the streets. So could you just let us know, when you said that cycling culture was not a part of CVF, and then you created this network, and now it's become a part of the culture that people can't think of the city without cycling. So what did you do to get the cyclists on the city streets?
Well, there's a thing that we have to take into account is that we think actually that infrastructure, the proper infrastructure, is sort of the foundations of the building that you have to build when you want to promote cycling. And this is happening actually all around the world. I mean, it's not something cultural, something that can be applied in one city, not the other one. I don't think, or I don't know a city where you have a really good model share of cycling, and you do not have infrastructure when you're coming from a city that do not have that cycling culture beforehand. So all the experiences that we are listening to today are making us think about that.
Sure.
Taking that into account, what we experienced in Seville was kind of surprising, even for the people that were working on that process. The success of the infrastructure and the people getting to use that infrastructure was absolutely amazing. I recall those days where we were calling each other, the people that were working on the process, and just say, okay, I counted like 45 in just 500 meters. It was something amazing for us. And there's also something that I wanted also to share with you, is that when we wrote the master plan, there were sort of things about communication, about learning, about public transit, bunch of other activities that we wanted to apply because we were afraid at the moment that we were building infrastructure and what happened if we had no bikes. So it would be about communication effort to communicate all the population that we spend that much money on having that infrastructure, but we had actually no cyclists. But what we didn't need to apply any of that.
Sure.
I mean, it was just something that was amazing. We also learned, for example, it was really important in the first phases of the implementation of the network. For example, that the network and the design had to be homogeneous all over the network. So if we bet at that moment for a bidirectional cycle lane, separated and not segregated, separated, I would like to use that word better, separated from the traffic, that should be like the same model that had to be replied in the rest of the network for about 90%. For example, if you get 40% of the network bidirectional and 60% of unidirectional, that doesn't work. So we sort of learned some lessons that we are also applying in other cities right now. And we learned a lot about that. But answering your question, it was just something amazing how we did knew that there were many bikes on the trash rooms in the the households. Lots of people had bikes, but they were not using them. So the bikes just came out from everywhere.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. Great to hear about that, Manuel. And I'm so sorry we're running really late. So we will come back to the other cities with the questions, and we can share it with the cities as well. So thank you so much, our panelists, for joining us today, and we will come back to you as well. So if I could just summarize very, very quickly as to what we heard. Of course, we heard Manuel say that if you build it right, they would come. And we heard from Sanskriti about the various other pieces, including communications, enforcement, regulations, etc. Smritika, could you please share the slides once again so that we could just very quickly summarize? We heard a lot of things from Addis Ababa as well as from Bogota as well. So if you could just go to the next slide. So we very, very clearly said that if we can create a city where even our children can actually cycle safely, of course, like Sanskriti said, it's not something that we can do right now, but if we take the right steps, soon enough, we will have a city which is good enough for children. And if we do have that, we would have one which is good enough for everyone else, as the former mayor of Bogota, Enrique Peñalosa, said. So if we just move to the next slide. Yeah, so we have very clearly, the panelists have highlighted that one thing which is very, very important is safety. They have in their presentations shown how the traffic accidents have reduced because they've created safe cycling networks. They've clearly highlighted the need for connectivity. Sanskriti, in her presentation, the Pune team showed how they looked at various destinations and how they can be connected to make sure that our citizens can have a meaningful cycle ride. The cycle ride itself needs to be comfortable. So looking at having tree cover, etc., to make sure that the ride is comfortable. Security was very, very essential. We heard that there were many cycles which were lost in multiple cities. Pune also an example, and that they're now looking at creating cycle parking, and as well as making sure that all of our citizens have access to cycles as well. Going to the next slide. So one thing that we want to highlight, is that there is no cycling without providing for walking. Like if you do have cycle tracks without walking, safe spaces for walking, your pedestrians will be on your cyclists and people will not be able to cycle safely. And here is a picture from Delhi that shows very clearly that you need cycle tracks, but yeah, you need walking networks right next to it. Now, we've heard from multiple cities that said whether if it was Bogota, where the cycling had increased by 500%, Addis Ababa, which said 7.5 times. We've also heard from the team Pune that continuously spoke about what were the issues and how they're looking at tackling it. So measuring the impact, both the baseline and how things change is very, very important. We will share a guide for measuring impact, and we'd really encourage you all to do the same as well. And last but not the least, before we proceed, all of you all have been through a fabulous journey. Let's just take a minute and reflect on what went. What are the things that worked for you? What did not work for you? Compile these learnings, because they will inform your scale-up strategy and they will inform your implementation going ahead. We will share a guide for this as well, and we really hope that you would use it. Now, as we come to the end of this particular moderated session, I truly believe that this is a decade of celebrating the cycle. And I invite all of you to join us in this particular journey. And I'd like to pass the baton to Pareen, where he will take us through what the next steps are for our Stage 2 cities. Over to you, Pareen. And thank you so much once again, distinguished panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashwati. Thank you all the panelists for giving such a wonderful presentation. There were some very great insights. Welcome all the cities for the Stage 2. And here we begin. So last, when we started Stage 1, we shared with you the Healthy Streets policy. And within the Healthy Streets policy, we highlighted 3 verticals. Let's understand how to get about going with these 3 verticals. So the 3 verticals of the policy mentioned 3 things: foundation, action, and communication. Foundation was on scale-up strategy, which basically meant developing plans. So here what we are going to look at is developing a 3-year plan. We not only want short-term activities, but we also want things that can sustain long, and this would further go beyond 3 years. But let's begin with 3-year action plan. We also want a right set of institution, like Sanskriti mentioned about having a bicycle department. We initiated the conversation on HS department. We are going to further work on that. Of course, we started working on Healthy Streets policy. Almost all of you started working towards it, and we hope soon you'll be adopting it. Setting up the Apex committee to ensure that there is easy coordination, and very important, each one of you said how managing parking is extremely important. So this time we are also going to be touching on parking policy and helping you to adopt one. Coming to actions, it's about doing physical interventions on ground. Last time we started doing some tactical solutions. If you remember, doing protected cycle lanes and also attempting to do traffic calm streets. Again, this time we are not only going to test new solutions, especially the intersections for seamless connectivity, providing cycle parking, and this time we are going to make it permanent. So this is an exciting time for the next year to see some very great things happening on ground. And with doing interventions, we are going to also ensure that we are managing parking. So we will also see how to make parking management plans to enforce it right and manage it well. And finally, to support all of this, we need great communications to ensure we continuously build support with citizens, with our political leaders and city different stakeholders. With that, we come up with content calendar, which Angi would talk about more in the subsequent presentation, and also about various activities that we'll start to build support on. So let's understand the first thing on foundation. We'll very quickly take an overview. So talking about the 3-year cycle plan, it's about now looking at a bit of a long-term plan for 3 years starting from next year. So this is a plan that we are working for 22 to 24. Very simply put, the 3-year plan is going to have the way Sanskriti very quickly took us through vision, goals, what are the different initiatives that the city highlighted, the bicycle network plan, which all the 3 cities spoke about, importantly on how they're going to achieve it, what's the funding, and very importantly, how we are going to measure it. So that's going to be the part of action plan. Don't worry, we are going to send all of this to you and explain each and everything to you. So we will help you with putting together the action plan. Very quickly on the vision, it's basically what you want to achieve over the time. Like Pune mentioned that how it wants to get towards 23% of mode share of bicycle over 2031. Similarly, other cities like Paris have said that they want to make their cities 100% bicycle friendly by 2024. So the big thing I would say, think big about your vision and time it. So we are not only thinking about a vision, but achieving within the time frame. Going ahead, goals. Goals are basically the outcomes that will tell you that we are reaching close to our vision, and they are basically measurable. Remember, it is measurable. A few examples for it, what it would mean: basically increase in the mode share, but we also want, with increase in the mode share, we want their proportion of women and children cyclists also increasing. So here are some example points which will tell you that you are reaching towards your goal and ensuring that cycling is for everyone. Again, we will give all of this in a document for you to go through, so don't worry about it. Next slide, please. Very importantly, with this also comes with various strategies and initiatives that go into helping you to achieve the vision of a 3-year cycling plan. Again, these are very concrete steps which will help you to achieve the various outputs. As mentioned by all the cities, we are going to bucket this into 3 big categories of infrastructure, institutional, and communications. Simple examples: infrastructure meaning X kilometers of cycle lanes, so many number of bicycle parking spaces. Institutional, which we are already working on adopting healthy streets, doing some building regulations changes to ensure that there is minimum parking. So we will identify that list and include this in our plan. And finally, communications. We need to build support. So there is no way out, and we need to build support with all levels of citizens together. Keep in mind that these have to have targets and ensure that there are steps in strategies in all the categories. Yes, importantly, all the cities spoke about their bicycle network plan, and that's extremely important. As Ashwati mentioned, think of it like your route, the metro system that anyone would plan. And here you are creating a whole metro system for cycling. And everyone in the city could go from one corner of the city to another corner of the city. And hence, it's very important that we create a cycling plan. And this is what we are going to do as a point in stage 2. And here we are going to certainly share the method of identifying the network. It's simple, and we will share how to go about with it. And key points to note this is that we are creating a network, especially for commuter cyclists. Of course, you can identify network for recreation, but keep in mind, we are right now all towards, our first priority is towards commute cyclist, and ensure we will see how we can create networks that are at a city level, but also at the same time connecting neighborhoods. And keep one thing in mind, the network is not one-time thing. We'll keep on adding more and more. So it is a plan, something which will grow over the time. And very importantly, we need an implementation roadmap. We cannot just stop at only identifying strategies. We need an implementation. So we need a clear-cut timeline, who will do what and how we will achieve it. So here are 3 things to keep in mind. Of course, we know that we are going to achieve our goals by 3 years. We will have each year what we are going to do. So starting from next year, we will identify what you are going to achieve in 2022 and so on. And it's very important that we also identify various public agencies. Of course, ULB is a key anchor, but also other public agencies that will be required to to achieve the strategies, and ensure that as we learn, as we create the plan and implement it, if there are any learnings, we tweak the plan to be able to better it going ahead. Next slide, please. We need to identify funding and financing. Of course, the cities will with you. This is something which we will identify various budgets. Of course, there are budgets from ULB Smart Cities Fund, but here are other 2 points. Also explore various other funds that may be available to your cities, such as under the Clean Air Action Plan, Climate Change, Road Safety, or in many cases also Nirbhaya funds, where you can use the funds to ensure that the cycling is safe for women. So you can also identify such funds that can help achieve your various strategies. Also, looking at innovative ways of creating funds, revenues that can be invested further in such initiatives, such as parking. And this is something which we are going to work with you in the coming time on how to enforce, and not only enforce, but also price parking. Here is an example of what Barcelona does. It funds its whatever parking money it gets, it funds its public bike sharing system. So there are many such examples across the globe. Next, please. And finally, evaluation indicators. We will be giving some set of indicators which will help you to understand if you're achieving the goals. These are indicators. These are a mix of both qualitative and quantitative ones. Here we'll be not only doing counts, but also some interviews, surveys, and this will be done at different time frames. So one which is done in intermediate terms during the year, so that we know that we are on the right direction ahead, and certain things which we may do at the end of a year or in end of 2 years to understand if our cities are going ahead in the right direction. And as Sanskriti mentioned, this together becomes a great tool for you to advocate further and scale up. So we hope to see all these results coming together in a document, and you spread this to your citizens. So this is all about the bicycle plan. The next step is on setting up your Healthy Streets department cell. It's very important that you have a right team. You have a team within the ULB to do this work, and that will get the things moving. We had shared the guide on how to set up the Healthy Streets department or to begin with a cell. And some of you have already started doing it. Some very quick steps. You can start with assigning the existing ULB staff, hire new members from the committee that's working with you already, some enthusiasts, cycling enthusiast experts within the team to start working on. We have shared this proposal note for Healthy Streets, which you can use to further prepare it for your city, which will give details on roles, staffing, budget, and all of that, which you can further take it to the standing committee's approval. And further that, as you see the team growing, as you see various initiatives that your city takes up, please feel free to add the capacity within your team. So hire additional team members that you may require. And finally, keep on hosting regular meetings with your Apex committee to keep in loop and to say how the team is working ahead. And finally, we spoke about Healthy Streets policy. We already started adopting it, the process of adopting it in last stage. And this is here. I know many of you are in the process. Mark the date, 26 January, Republic Day. That's a good time to release your policy, talk about it, gather support from various stakeholders. So mark that on the calendar, and we recommend you to work towards that target. And to that, if you haven't set up an Apex committee, please do so as early as possible. Next thing, we will move to the next thing. So this is all great. We are going to create plans, but not just plan making is not enough. We want to see actual things happening on ground. So we want to see visible transformation. So here is one thing, but a main thing, which is on testing new tactical solutions and making it permanent. And even if the last interventions that you started, if they weren't right, keep adding that, keep doing it better. Now the aim here that we're looking for is that, and all the panelists have set a huge target. And here is the target, though it is a small one compared to what Seville had done, but here it is. What we want all of you to achieve in the next year, that is 2022, is that you at least do 15 kilometers of cycling corridors, which is protected cycle lanes and footpaths. We all started it in stage 1. However, we have to now this time ensure that each and every corner of it is right in terms of its execution and people are finding it meaningful. Along with that, we also want to ensure that there is a network of neighborhood streets connecting people to their homes and jobs from the corridors. And we are setting about a 35 kilometer, together a 50 kilometer network. This is something which is achievable in the year ahead. And all these examples have shown that. Again, keep in mind, we are creating such kind of streets that you would be proud to say to any visitor in your city that these are the streets which are cycling friendly. So with that spirit, we are designing these streets. Along with the streets, it's very important that we create intersections. So any intersections within this network, it's very important that you take care of, and also the in-between crossings. And along this network, ensure that you have the facilities to create parking, cycle parking, cycle stations, public bike sharing systems, repair clinics, to ensure that cyclists are comfortable and it's convenient for anyone to ride on that cycle. Ensure that your network is connected and continuous so that it would have a seamless connectivity. Next slide, please. A quick look at how we are going to implement this, a quick look at the process. This time we are going to do it with getting the consultants on board. Here are the 5 quick steps. First thing, we are going to develop project proposal. We are going to roll out terms of reference, RFP to hire consultants. We are going to develop the design with the urban designer, with the consultants that you get on board, refine the design, and finally ensure not only it's get implemented, but also to measure it. Today, I'm going to speak about the first 2 things, and this is where we are going to start acting on it. So developing the proposal, there are 3 things in it, very simple. We are going to identify the network. We will give the guidance on how to go about with it. You're already champions on doing handlebar surveys, and we are going to be again sharing that. But in order to come to what are the gaps, challenges in your locations, we are going to give you, we expect you to do a handlebar survey. And as Ashwati said, without walking, there is no cycling. So we are going to also do some walking audits, for which we will also share with you some guidance. And finally, we are going to create an RFP towards it. Next slide, please. So ensure that when you're creating project proposals, that simple thing that you have, why you're selecting this site, what are its opportunities, benefits, put the images, findings that you have found from your audits, handlebar surveys, interviews that you may have taken, clearly mention what stretches, what locations that you're taking, which will form part of the RFP. Next slide, please. Rolling out RFP, ITDP will hand over the template for you so that you can use that RFP, tweak it as per your city, and include the project proposal so that it's very clear. A few points to note, within the RFP, you can hire more than 1 consultant. So it's not necessary that entire bunch is given to that consultant. Also, the narrow streets, the smaller neighborhood streets can also be taken by the healthy streets department. So in that, there is a more active participation of them also into design. Also with this, consultants are not only going to make detailed designs, but before that also going to create test the designs before making it permanent. And one final thing, it has to be a participatory process to ensure that you're working with CSOs and cycling groups. Next. And finally, with this, we don't have, it's very important that we keep on doing communications. And here I invite Angi to take ahead these pieces.
Thank you so much, Parin, for that very crisp presentation. And I hope that sets a solid benchmark for all of our cities to work in stage 2. Like Parin has touched upon a couple of times during his presentation, communicating the work we do is equally or even more important as doing the work itself. So I'm sure in stage 1, you have all seen firsthand how important it is to build support from your citizens. As we step into stage 2, we'll take up more targeted campaigns and regular communication works to ensure that the work gets done and all the work that you do gets its due recognition and the momentum is constantly maintained. So here in front of you are the different activities that we want to take up for this, for the coming up stage 2. So first, I'll talk a little more about the content calendar, but first we want you to use the content calendar. Next, update all your audiences very regularly. After that, roll out a pledge campaign. And finally, continue all the exciting activities that you have been doing in stage 1 itself. Okay, so here is a content calendar. This is a new and exciting management tool that's coming your way. Basically, this is something that we are going to create from our end and share with you every single month that will detail out all of your monthly tasks and list it out for you. As and when you complete these tasks, you can just mark a simple tick so that you know it's done. This will also nudge you regularly and on a weekly basis to take up multiple different tasks such as updating on social media, sharing a newsletter, and so on and so forth. The calendar will also highlight many important days that will come up, such as Pedestrian Days, Republic Day, road safety week, etc. So you can plan campaigns around it and know in advance that this is coming, so you can better plan for it. The calendar obviously can also be tweaked based on your city's pace and how your city's requirements are. So this is going to be an editable format that we will share it in. Next, update all of your audiences very regularly. So who are your different audiences that you need to update with all of the work that you do? Your citizens, city leaders, city officials, other interested stakeholders and partners, as well as back to us, the coordinating team at ITDP and the Smart Cities mission. So the content calendar itself will also nudge you regularly and on a weekly basis to share these updates on social media. So many of your audiences will get covered over there. Over and above that, we're going to be sharing with you a template that we're calling your monthly bulletin. This is nothing but a form of a newsletter that you can update. The template will come with a guide that will list out the different ways in which you can update. It will be step by step, and it'll give you a step-by-step understanding on how you can update this, develop it, and then share it on multiple channels. You can share this as an update via email, via social media, back to us at ITDP, and so on. This guide will be shared with you shortly. Now, here is your new and exciting campaign. So far, like I mentioned, you have been sort of working with the citizens to build support. Now it's time to sort of look inwards. Let's target our own city leaders and city officials to build support, as this is going to be super critical, like when we move into stage 2 and take up all of the different activities that Paran has mentioned. So this campaign is pretty simple. All you need to do is get maximum signatures from all your city leaders and city officials on a pledge poster that we will be sharing from our end. How you go about doing it and what are the steps that you need to take for it will be shared in a detailed guide. The aim of the campaign, like I mentioned, is to get as many signatures as you can and then put it out there for your city to know that multiple different city departments are now coming together to support healthy streets in your city. Let's just take a very brief look at the different steps that we need to take for the campaign. First, you reach out to your city's commissioner to endorse this pledge. Next, request all of your other city leaders, such as your city's mayor, standing committee members, even state department members, to endorse this pledge. You host as many on-ground events that you need to, such as open streets, campaigns, rallies, and more, to build support for it. Eventually, finally, request maximum department leaders and other city officials to come and sign this pledge poster. And finally, spread the word. That is, let your city know. Put up this poster with all these signatures on social media and build support. Finally, we have absolutely loved the enthusiasm and energy that each one of you have shown in stage 1. The cycle rally, cyclathons, repair clinics, children competitions, street plays, cycle training camps, open street campaigns, and so much more. You guys have nailed it in stage 1. It was a blast to see that energy. So let's bring that energy back. Once again, let's come up with constant, regular, and innovative ways to engage with our citizens in large numbers to maintain this momentum and keep cycling alive in the city throughout. Detailed resources to conduct these campaigns and open streets, etc., are on our website, and we will share them with you once again as well. So finally, to summarize, what are the next steps? What are your key takeaways from this workshop? First, like Ashwati mentioned, you've done great work in stage 1. Go ahead, reflect on it, gather your learnings, and put them together. Compile them. Next, under foundation, collect all of the baseline data that you require for your bicycle network. Set up your HS Healthy Street Department or cell. Adopt your Healthy Streets policy and set up your Apex committee, like Parin mentioned, by 26th of January. Next, under action, develop the project proposal and roll out an RFP to hire a design consultant. Finally, under communications, use the content calendar that we will be sharing, update all of your audiences, initiate the pledge campaign, and continue to build momentum like you have in stage 1. We will be sharing all of the detailed resources like we have mentioned throughout the workshop. Next slide, please. So, and guess what, guys? What's more, in stage 2, we will be hosting regional workshops. So we are going to be coming to your city or a city near you. And so gear up for some hands-on training sessions and discussions. We're extremely, extremely excited to transform an entire nation to one that's very safe for cycling. All right, thank you so much. I would like to invite Ashwati and Parin both to join in for question and answers. I'll just be taking the questions that have come in from the audience. First, there's a question from Daksmita Man from Tumkuru. So is there any criteria to participate in stage 2 of the challenge? Would either of you like to take it, Parin, Ashti?
Parin, you want to go for it?
Yeah. So I would say that if you have worked through the stage 1, if you have achieved what happened in stage 1, you could pick up from it and move towards stage 2. Also, I would recommend that you speak to the C4C coordinating team to further understand where your city is at exactly, and then we can take it ahead from stage 2. But yeah, nothing stops you from working towards the goals of stage 2. Ashwati, if you would like to add.
No, I think you're well summarized, and we would really encourage all cities who've been a part of the stage 1 to join us in stage 2 as well. And just on that note, the numbers that we put up in terms of the action that we expect you all to do, it's very specific to each city. You know, one city might be small, another city might be much larger. So I would also, urge that you be inspired by what Manuel mentioned, where depending on the size of your city, choose your network that is meaningful for you, and then go ahead and implement that.
Sure. Thank you. Next question. We have already started working on a scale-up plan. So how do we integrate this with the 3-year cycling action plan?
That's a great question. And thank you for bringing this up. And what you started in stage 1, continue with that. So you could very well integrate this into a cycle plan. So we are not working at different exercises. You can very well use this and integrate in the cycle plan. So continue working on the same network, increase it, expand it to ensure that you're serving more and more. So you could take it up the same thing. I hope that answered that question.
Sure, yes, thank you. All right, so with that, we come to an end of our workshop. That's the first workshop for stage 2. I would like to thank all of you for joining in, senior officials, engineers, project management consultants, community partners, all other stakeholders, all the panelist cities. I'm sure the time difference may not actually match up as well, but still, thank you so much for joining, sharing your journey, and giving such a strong motivational message to all of our Indian cities as we start the next stage. Thank you, everyone. And to cities, we look forward to receiving regular updates, because now we're back in action from all of you on the WhatsApp groups, as well as weekly updates that we will nudge you to share with us. That's it from me. Thank you so much, everyone.
And last but not the least, I'd also like to thank the entire team of Pune Municipal Corporation, the huge team that came together to show how Pune is really invested in cycling. Thank you, Team Pune. Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you.